This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Empower.
Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome back to Death by Southwest. I am your host, Margot. Hi, guys. How are you? So I know I said maybe I would get part 2 out sooner. Obviously, I did not. And I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you're excited to hear it today. And hopefully you did not go look this up, but I would be lying if I said I would fault you for looking it up. I totally understand. This case really got me. So let's jump right in. No chit chat. If you recall, last time we ended with a mistrial. So Katie Conley, Mary Yoder's son's ex-girlfriend, and Mary Yoder's receptionist at her chiropractic office. That is who Katie Conley is, and that is who is on trial for Mary's murder. Now, the jury deliberated for 5 days after 3 weeks of testimony and came to the conclusion it was a hung jury. So no conclusion, really. And last time, if you recall, I said it's not over yet, and it certainly is not. So 5 months after the first trial ended in a mistrial, Katie's second trial began. So this time, the prosecution had new evidence, and they were ready to use it. A search had been done on Adam Yoder's computer, and they discovered something very interesting. Katie had a habit of backing up her phone to Adam's computer while they were still dating. And one of those backups was actually done after Mary's death. And within that backup, investigators found internet searches done from Katie's phone for types of poison, and more specifically, dosage calculations for colchicine, including how much it would take to kill someone about Mary's size. That's pretty damning. And that's not all. So in Katie's Notes app, she had written under seat. And investigators believe that this is her planning where to hide the colchicine bottle, which was, if you recall, later found under the passenger seat of Adam's Jeep. I have thoughts, but I'm not going to share them yet. So another piece of evidence that they found that some people consider kind of the most like eyebrow-raising evidence or discovery was the password for the email used to purchase the colchicine, which the prosecution is, of course, saying is a fake email because Adam was like, I've never seen that email. I've never used that email. So the password for that was Adam is gay. And the prosecution claimed that this showed that Katie was vindictive, angry, and just being petty, choosing a password that was kind of mocking Adam. I'm not going to be overly woke about this. Obviously, I feel that the use of that word is inappropriate in the way that it's being used in this. I'm sure I'm going to get some eye rolls here, but I have to say that. The defense, however, had their own theory. They claimed it actually pointed back to Adam. The defense said that he and his friends used to jokingly say that kind of stuff to each other all the time. So they would call each other gay and use that as an insult. And Katie said that she never used that term, especially not as a joke, which good for Katie. Also in this second trial, the defense had a new strategy and Katie had a new attorney. So instead of defending her innocence with kind of these broad strokes, they went directly after Adam. The defense described Katie and Adam's relationship as toxic, volatile, and deeply unhealthy. They brought Adam's cousin up to testify, and this cousin claimed that he had witnessed Adam being physically abusive towards Katie, and that he saw Adam use Katie's computer pretty regularly while they were together. The defense argued that Adam was tech savvy and could have accessed Katie's phone and computer without being physically near her. The prosecution countered and said, well, this isn't really technically possible. But it planted that seed of doubt. And this is something I actually should have looked up. I think that is possible. I think that is technically possible. So if we have any computer whizzes here, and I will also look it up, but you can remote access a computer. I see it done on TV a lot, so maybe it can't actually be done, but according to multiple Law and Order, FBI, Criminal Minds, etc., you can definitely get into somebody's computer remotely. So I will look that up. But either way, even if it isn't possible to do, agreed that it did plant some kind of seed of doubt that he could access it remotely. Sure. But that also that what the cousin said, that he used Katie's computer pretty regularly. And that's not all. The defense had more. So the defense revealed that Katie had once filed rape charges against Adam during one of their breakups. Police had questioned Adam about it. He claimed he didn't remember the night, said that he had blacked out. No charges were ever officially filed, and shortly after, the two got back together. Now, during that investigation, and possibly this one, Adam did admit that he had hit Katie on more than one occasion. And then some bombshell messages came up after another time they broke up, because remember, they broke up, got back together, broke up pretty frequently. So after one of these breakups, Katie had told Adam that she was pregnant, but that she had already had an abortion because she didn't want to raise the child alone. And Adam responded in a voicemail, "You wouldn't have fucking been alone. I'm not a piece of shit. That decision should have been made by two people." Sorry, I don't know why I slurred I can say the word decision. Sorry, guys. There were also messages between them showing that Adam was the one trying to win Katie back, not the other way around. As the prosecution kind of portrayed it, they portrayed it that Katie was devastated by the breakup and this was revenge. Killing Mary was revenge to get back at Adam, which, again, just to bring this back up, doesn't totally make sense. And this came from the first trial. Like, it doesn't totally make sense that Katie would do that out of revenge because Adam was fighting with his mom. They weren't getting along. So some might say that isn't a really effective revenge. So now the question in this second trial is becoming, who has the motive? The defense made a strong statement that Katie had no real motive. She adored Mary. Everyone who knew her, everyone who knew Mary knew that she adored Mary. She considered her kind of a mother figure, and that Mary and Adam were the ones on bad terms. So basically what I just said, how would killing Mary even punish Adam? Now, I'll be honest, even if I'm on bad terms with my mom's no longer here, but if I was and she was, or my dad, if someone murders, so let's go with my dad because he's still alive. I've been on bad terms with my dad plenty of times. And if someone murdered him, it would still absolutely punish me, so to speak. I would be devastated, even if we were on bad terms. I mean, he's my dad. So I'm not sure that I fully agree with that kind of line of thinking. But that's what they went with. The prosecution painted Katie as obsessed and scorned, that she killed Mary to get Adam back, and that it kind of worked because after Mary died, Adam did reach back out and the two kind of were hanging out and leaning on each other. But the defense claimed and argued that the reverse made more sense, that Adam wanted Katie back. And when she wouldn't come back, he killed his mom and framed her. I would love to, I wish I could stop the episode here to hear what you guys think and then come back and do the rest of it, but I will not. But I'd love to know what you think at this point in the episode. Do you think that the prosecution, their argument, how Katie was obsessed and scorned and killed Mary to get back at Adam, or that Adam wanted Katie back and killed his own mom and then framed her to kind of get her back so that he could comfort her and stuff? Okay. So, because of the hung jury in trial number 1, this time around, the prosecution decided to give the jury 2 possible charges to consider: second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter. Now, I'm sure that many of you already know what that means, but I'm just going to break it down. Second-degree murder means the person intentionally killed someone, but no premeditation. So they didn't plan it. It was like in a fit of rage. First-degree manslaughter usually means that someone caused a death in the heat of the moment or without intending to kill. So I guess a fit of rage would also work here. But first-degree manslaughter is less intentional than second-degree murder. Second-degree murder, you are meaning to murder that person, but you didn't think about it before you showed up at their house. You showed up at their house hoping to have a conversation, and then you realized you're going to murder them. Manslaughter, first-degree manslaughter. I really wish I had an example because I'm not good at thinking of them on the fly. Hopefully that makes sense, though. You caused the death, you pushed them, and they hit their head. Something like that. I don't really understand how first-degree manslaughter would apply in a poisoning situation. However, after weeks of testimony, the jury once again couldn't reach a unanimous verdict on second-degree murder. But this time they did agree on something. In November of 2017, 24-year-old Caitlin Conley was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter, which, like I just said, doesn't totally make sense here, because what they're claiming is that if what they're claiming is true, she ordered colchicine online. She created a fake email. She researched the correct dosage, and then she planted the poison in Adam's car. All of that feels like pretty premeditated. However, this is what the jury went with. Fine. I mean, it's not fine. I don't think it's fine, but I'm going to say fine. So after the verdict is read, the court moves into victim impact statements. And Adam spoke first. And I'm not going to read the entire impact statement from him or from Bill Yoder, but I'm going to share parts of it. He says, "I introduced Katie Conley to my family because I loved her. They all accepted her and treated her as family, as blood. Make no mistake, I hate the defendant. With every bone in my body and every drop of blood in my veins, I hate Caitlin Ann Conley because Caitlin Ann Conley murdered my mother." So he wasn't mincing words there at all. He was pretty visibly emotional. He did go on to take a little bit of accountability, saying, that he's the one who brought her into their lives and that he'll now live with that guilt forever. And then it was Mary's husband's turn, Bill Yoder, husband of 40 years. And he gave a pretty personal, emotional statement. So I'm just going to read you a few parts of it. He said, "Everyone who knew Mary or even briefly met her said she was one of the kindest, most loving, most caring people they'd ever encountered. When Mary was part of your day had more light, more energy, more joy." He described watching her in the grocery store, smiling at strangers, reaching out with a gentle touch, and how even in passing, Mary made people feel better. He said, quote, "Mary was the center of my life. She gave meaning to all of my moments. Even when she wasn't with me, I couldn't wait to be back near her to share every little thing. We would just sit on the couch and snuggle, and I always felt like the luckiest man alive." Then his tone got a little harsher. He said, quote, "It somehow makes it worse knowing that she was murdered for such a trivial reason. A fight with a boyfriend? That's why you poisoned someone? She killed a woman who loved her, who treated her with kindness, and she's shown zero remorse, none. During both trials, Katie smiled. Even while poison experts described Mary's painful final hours, Even while witnesses talked about the suffering, she smiled. She smirked at investigators. She acted like it was all some kind of game, a lark. But there's nothing amusing about murder. There's nothing amusing about Mary's death. Well spoken, I think, for Bill. Now it's Katie's turn to talk. And she is very emotional, crying, and through tears, she tells the judge, "The justice system has failed. I am innocent." And then she thanks everyone who supported her through the case and sits down, which is I think is pretty telling. No apology. I mean, I don't know. I think it's effective. I guess she's not going to apologize for a crime that she didn't commit or believes she didn't commit. It was a very concise thing to the justice system has failed. I am innocent. Thank you to everyone who supported me, and then sits down. I guess I'm surprised that she didn't mention how much she loved Mary or how devastated she was, but perhaps that would look desperate, maybe like too little, too late. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I guess it doesn't matter. You know, I kind of understand why criminals or people who are convicted of crimes, whether they did them or not, I don't know, but why they choose not to speak. Because at that point, it's kind of like, why? Unless you did it and you want to apologize to people, what are you going to say that's going to matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just a personal thing. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent and pondering. I know. I'll stop. So let's move on to a little bit of information about some of Mary's sisters. Remember, 3 of Mary's sisters, not the one who started dating Mary's husband, but her other 3 sisters were very much against Adam and Bill, and they were on Katie's side. So they had grown extremely close to Katie, both through the years that Katie was part of the family, essentially, and then, you know, through all this trial. And so they also spoke at the sentencing, and they pled with the judge for leniency. They all said that they don't believe Katie is guilty, that they never have. They stand firmly behind her, even after the guilty verdict. Even after sentencing, they all said they never accepted the outcome of the investigation. And since the trial and the sentencing, they've been extremely vocal and extremely persistent in their belief that Katie is innocent and that the real killer is someone much closer to home. So Janine, one of Mary's younger sisters, runs a website called Free Caitlin Conley, where she and her sisters advocate for Katie's innocence and also very openly accuse Mary's husband, Bill Yoder, of being the actual murderer. On this website, they lay out what they believe to be glaring flaws and oversights in the investigation. They have claims of circumstantial evidence that's been ignored. They claim that the investigators are allegedly protecting Bill. And they even claim that medical professionals are complicit in what they describe as a cover-up. So they think that Bill did this, and because of his connections to the medical world and perhaps investigators also, that this is a big, giant cover-up. And I do have, I'm trying to decide if I want to share this now or later. Let's share it now. I'm going to tell you a few things. There's a lot on this website, so I definitely would recommend checking it out. It is freecaitlinconley.com. And there is a lot of claims about circumstantial evidence, and they go deep into it. So I'm not going to read everything. But on the website, it says, this case is based on circumstantial evidence and is filled with reasonable doubt. There is so much reasonable doubt in this case and so many leads that were never fully investigated. Justice for Mary isn't going to be achieved by going after an innocent person. Katie did not do it. So one area of reasonable doubt is the electronics. apparently the investigators, all they could say is that things looked like they came from certain devices, but they didn't know who was the one responsible for it, who was behind the screen, so to speak. Bill and Adam had access to the office and and therefore had access to certain devices such as the work computer and the electronic word processor. Adam very much so had access to all of the devices in question, including Katie's phone and laptop. The ADAs claimed that hacking and remote access were out of the question, but the prosecution only looked up one program with their keyword search. So this coming directly from the Free Caitlin Conley. If you have physical possession of a phone that doesn't have a passcode on it, you don't need to hack into it. So Adam apparently during the investigation testified that he used Katie's phone on occasion. So he either knew the passcode or it didn't have one. And because he used her phone and he said that in court, he could do anything. He was pretty technologically savvy. So he could have done the research. He could have installed programs on the phone. Like he could have done anything and Katie would not have known. And this is really interesting. Their phones had both been connected to the same Apple ID account. So if you have an iPhone, you know that like your app, you can't really operate your phone unless you sign into your Apple ID. And then everything is attached to that Apple ID. Any apps you download, I don't know about search and browser history, probably. But everything that you do on your phone basically is attached to that ID. So if they're both signed in to the same ID on their own separate phones, how do you differentiate between who did what? I guess I'm going to sound really technologically stupid here. I don't know. I wonder if based on the IP address, the serial number of the specific phone, if that differentiates, or if it's just like, this is all the things associated with this Apple ID. We don't know what phone, because my Apple ID is on my computer too, my broken computer. So I digress. There are multiple remote access programs, any of which Adam could have used, and they'd never know because it wasn't part of their investigation. So they kind of had this tunnel vision. Once they settled on Katie, which, we've heard happen in a lot of cases, but once they settled on Katie as why is the word escaping me? Suspect, as their main suspect, they had tunnel vision and they were not fully, now this is again, allegedly, according to the sisters, they were not fully investigating everything and every other angle. Now, they also asked Bill and Adam to turn over their own electronic devices, which they did, but how did the investigators know that they turned over all of them? They didn't go and search and confiscate them, apparently. They just asked, can you please hand over your electronic devices? And Bill and Adam were like, absolutely. What if they have an extra phone? What if they have an extra computer? What if they had a phone that they got rid of and then got a new one? You know what I mean? Apparently the timeline was very iffy. And it wasn't like they marched into Bill and Adam's house and were like, where are your electronics? We'll find them. And they took them. So another thing was that Bill didn't even turn over his electronics until Katie was already arrested. And his fingerprints weren't taken until July 2016 either. So that just shows kind of a lack of thorough investigation. Again, according to the sisters, I'm not shitting on the investigators or anybody because this case is filled with a lot of question marks. Certainly for somebody like me who simply researched it and learned about it. I mean, there's question marks for the sisters who are actually involved in the case and Katie. So all of us on the outside, of course, there's question marks. The murder weapon was another area of reasonable doubt. You don't have to be physically present to use it. So it could have been placed in a supplement prior to July 20th, 2015, the day that Mary got sick. They don't know how she was poisoned. They still don't. They never knew how she ingested this poison. So Bill could have done it at the house. Adam could have done it at the house. No one ever apparently searched Bill's home to gather evidence, which feels a little contradictory to me because I know that I said that they did check all of her supplements and her powders and stuff like that. I did research that and see that. So this feels a little contradictory to me. The medical examiner found evidence of colchicine in her stomach contents. And this was after she'd been sick for 2 days with nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. So her stomach was essentially empty. If you're sick for 2 days, throwing up, excuse me, but I know it's gross, but diarrhea, all of that, like super, super sick, in the hospital sick, and you're obviously not eating anything, how is there still colchicine in her stomach after throwing up for 2 days before she passed away? This, they believe, is indicative of another dose of colchicine being given to her while she was at the hospital, possibly in her anti-nausea medications. Again, remember I said he brought cough drops, her Advair inhaler, and she also had to drink something for a CT scan. And Bill was there the whole time, so he could have easily slipped it into any of that. Bill's relationship with Mary's sister, Kathy, they call that reasonable doubt. Okay. Yeah. They also say that investigators lied, coerced, and manipulated evidence when they were talking to Katie. They downplayed the importance of her Miranda rights. Apparently, they said to her that they have to read these stupid things like they do it in the movies or TV. Important things like Miranda rights should never be downplayed. It should have been relayed to Katie that they were looking at her as a suspect. Instead, they said they were reading her the Miranda rights because they were going to show her evidence. And that's just an outright lie. But police are allowed to lie to you during an investigation. We've covered that in plenty of episodes and know that to be true, which is why no matter what they say to you, you only say one word, and that is lawyer. Furthermore, Katie passed a polygraph. This wasn't, for whatever reason, allowed into court, but adds a little bit of reasonable doubt. And finally, they jumped to the conclusion that the email address used to create the letter. Oh, yeah, I remember. Sorry, I forgot this part. They claimed that the Mr. Adam Yoder 1990 at Gmail, that was the email used to create the letter that Katie finally admitted to writing. And that was also the email used to order the drug. But there is no evidence found on that email address that the anonymous letter was used creating that address. And so they're saying with, Google Docs, you can create, you're signed into your email on Google. You can use Google Docs, Google Voice, Gmail, whatever. It's all connected to the same thing. So you would see that the person who has this email that was used to order the colchicine also went into Google Docs. But that's not true. Apparently, there's no evidence to prove that the letter was edited from that email. They can only tell that it was actually edited on Google Docs, but they don't apparently know the email associated with it. It was Katie's school email that was logged in, apparently, at the time. This one confuses me a little bit, guys. Sorry. I do think that they have something here. I think that the Apple ID thing really gets me. So anyways, that was a little bit of an expansion on the glaring flaws and oversights that the sisters believe occurred in the investigation. They also believe that Bill was not only dating, Bill was dating their sister, their older sister, Kathy, but they believe that he was having an affair before Mary died, that the two of them were having an affair before Mary died. Bill and Kathy obviously have denied this many times, but the sisters, all three sisters, say that they're lying. According to them, Kathy has a progressive neurological disorder, and so she's in a pretty vulnerable state. And her husband had died about a year before Mary died, and she had, from his death, inherited a substantial amount of money. So the sisters believe that Bill was motivated by that money, and the affair was part of a larger motive behind Mary's death. So the sisters obviously are very, I believe, don't speak to Kathy. Janine lives in Utica, New York, with her husband Donald and runs a small business selling handmade purses online. Sharon is a respiratory therapist living in Frankfurt, New York, with her husband George. And Sally keeps a much lower profile. There's very little public information on her. So to this point in our story, these sisters continue to stand by Katie, and did for long after the trial and the sentencing. And they continue to point the finger at Bill, a man who they once called family. And some sources have claimed that they believe that Adam was in on it as well, which is what, I mean, it's pretty wild to think about. Like Bill is their brother-in-law. Adam is their nephew. And they have pretty much outright accused Bill and Adam of killing their sister and said Katie's completely innocent. Unfortunately, despite the sisters' extreme pleas for leniency for Katie, the judge sentenced Katie to 23 years in prison, which, now, if she did not do this, any amount of time in prison is too much time. If she did do this, I find 23 years to be offensive. If someone killed my mom in cold blood, I want them in prison for the rest of their life. But that's just me. So with that sentence of 23 years, this very small and tight-knit community is completely divided. And if you do decide to go watch the documentary after this, you will see that just the people in town who certainly know this case now, but who were familiar with Katie, were familiar with Adam, were familiar with Mary, completely divided. Some of them believe that Katie is 100% guilty. Like this was cold and calculated and just cold-blooded murder. Others believe that she is entirely wrongly convicted and she was framed by her controlling ex, Adam, and Adam's dad. So I'm so curious, and I really wish that this is one of those episodes that, I don't know, I was doing live or something and you guys could respond, because I would love to know, what do you think? What do you think? There is a lot that points to Katie. The anonymous letter she admitted she wrote, the email address, but again, after reading what's on the sisters' website, it seems shaky. The searches for colchicine, yeah, that is damning. But again, if Adam had access to her phone, who's to say he didn't do that? And all of that, even like I could explain away all of that as the defense did. So I could get behind what the defense said about all of this. There is one thing that really does get me, and I can't properly express this to you. You will have to go watch the documentary to see this. But there are some points in the interviews, and the interview, she's in prison. I mean, they put her in like a room that looks nice and isn't prison looking, but she's in prison when they interview her for this documentary. And they show clips from interviews from when this was actually happening and all of it. And some things from court. And what Bill said isn't wrong. There are some instances where she's kind of smiling or chuckling. In the Hulu special, there is a part where she's asked point blank, "Did you kill Mary Yoder?" And it is the weirdest thing. She lets out this kind of like weird high-pitched giggle is the best way to describe it, I guess, before she finally shakes her head no. And I will say that I watched this entire 3-part documentary and pretty much the whole time felt like she didn't do this. She didn't do this. And that part, it was weird. But I don't think that you can base, like, I can't base an entire, it doesn't change my mind, basically. Also, she's been in prison when this Hulu documentary is filmed for, I believe, 7 years. So they're making a Hulu documentary on her. She's been in prison for 7 years. According to her, she didn't do this. So I don't know. I don't know if you can really call any type of behavior at this point like weird or not weird or normal. It's all weird, and it all must be kind of surreal. She must feel somewhat removed from it. If she was wrongly convicted and she's been in prison for 7 years, like, I can't imagine what that does to your mental health, your emotional health, to your ability to kind of regulate and control your emotions. And honestly, throughout a lot of the documentary, she gets very choked up and very upset and cries. And I understand that people can act very well and put things on, but it feels very genuine to me. And the motive, for me, the motive isn't there. I don't know, to get back at Adam, like it just feels off. So I'm not sure. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think after hearing this from me. And then I'd be interested to hear what you think after watching the documentary, if you choose to watch it. I think that it's that the evidence is the only thing to look at, because after, with something like this, everyone's under a microscope. So her little weird giggle when she was asked that, first of all, that could be editing, I guess. Or it could be a million things, unexplainable. But when you're put under a microscope and every single thing that you do, say, every look is analyzed, it would be very difficult to come off looking completely like scot-free, not weird, not odd in certain moments. And I mean, Adam admitted to, well, first of all, Katie filed rape charges against him, which they do go into a little bit more in the documentary. He also admitted to hitting her. His cousin testified about their toxic relationship. Bill is now dating Mary's sister, like right after she died, 2 months. So to me, they are the more likely people. I did see some comments on part 1. I can't remember if it was on Spotify or YouTube, perhaps. It was on TikTok. I put that social media video up on TikTok, and there were some people actually arguing in the comments. One woman saying that she absolutely is a scapegoat and Katie didn't do this. And another woman saying that she absolutely did do this. So that was interesting. But we're not done yet. So after being sentenced in 2017, Katie spent years appealing. Her defense team argued that the trial was deeply flawed, the evidence was circumstantial, all the things I just said, and that Katie had been framed. But time after time after time, her appeals were denied. So she stayed in prison. She continued to stick to the fact that she was innocent. While serving her sentence at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, she worked in the prison's law library. And it was there that she found something that would ultimately change everything. She came across a document that she thought might help her case, and she handed it over to Melissa Swartz, an attorney who specializes in post-conviction appeals. She took one look at it, and she was stunned. She called it the most facially insufficient warrant that she's ever come across. So, okay, here's the simple version. In the original investigation, police had a warrant to take Katie's phone. However, they did not get a second warrant that allowed them to actually search the phone. And apparently this is a big deal. In the legal world, a phone is treated like a private home nowadays. Obviously, back before the phones were like mini computers, that wasn't the case. But nowadays, a phone is like a private home. Investigators can't just dig through every single thing on your phone without clear and specific permission. So Katie's original defense attorney, remember, she got a new attorney for the second trial, but her first attorney, Christopher Pelly, never challenged the search. And he eventually admitted, once all of this starts coming up, that, yeah, he made a mistake. He missed it. So in 2022, Melissa Swartz filed a motion arguing that Katie had received ineffective legal representation and that failure to challenge the phone search may have changed this trial's entire outcome. Seems reasonable, but the judge denied the motion. Swartz wasn't giving up that easily. And in January 2025, the court finally ruled in her favor. So Swartz continued to file these motions. And eventually the court agreed and said that her original attorney, Christopher Pelly's mistake was so serious that it actually violated Katie's right to a fair trial. So the impact of this, just to kind of go a little further, is that, most of the damaging evidence that likely contributed quite a bit to putting Katie away came directly from her phone. The internet searches for colchicine, the underseat that she wrote like in her notes app, and other key pieces that pointed the finger at her, but some of this data was also found on Adam's computer because Katie had backed up her phone there during the relationship. But prosecutors in the second trial leaned heavily on the phone itself. So even though the information that they got from Adam's computer was properly obtained, and they had all the proper warrants for that, they didn't for Katie's phone. And in the second trial, which is the one that she was convicted in, they leaned on the information that was specifically from that phone to prove their case and to refute the idea that Adam had framed her. So the court ruled that none of the phone data should have been allowed because the search went beyond the scope of the one warrant. If Katie's lawyer had challenged that warrant or the information being taken from her phone without a second warrant, back then, the evidence would have been thrown out and the outcome of the first trial may have been vastly different. She may have been found completely innocent without any of that information. And even if that hadn't happened in the first trial, very likely in the second, because the second trial is what relied on it the most. So in January 2025, just a few months ago, Katie's manslaughter conviction was officially vacated. And just like that, on February 4th, 2025, after nearly 8 years behind bars, Caitlin Conley walked free. Now, let's be clear that this ruling did not declare her innocent. It simply said that her trial had been unfair because her rights had been violated. According to this attorney that Katie obtained while she was in prison, Melissa Swartz, Melissa said her goal wasn't to prove who did or didn't kill Mary Yoder. Her job was to make sure that the system followed the rules, and it hadn't. So the big question now, because Katie was just released, we're in, I almost said March, we're in April. So 2 months ago, Katie was released. Is she going to be retried? That decision is up to the Oneida County District's Attorney's Office. And DA Todd Carville expressed frustration about the situation and said that his team is going to evaluate the remaining evidence and decide whether or not to present the case to another grand jury. So we will wait and see about that. This story has left far more questions than answers. Mary Yoder's death has left behind many, many more questions than answers, and still a ton of questions. Even though there was an outcome, there was a verdict, a decision, someone went to prison, now they're out. I mean, the questions just continue to linger. People still believe that Katie was framed, and they think that the people who had the most to gain from Mary's death were not held accountable. Others are still convinced that Katie carefully orchestrated this murder down to the detail and then tried to walk away from it. This case has split families, certainly has divided communities, and has sparked movements on both sides. It is, one of those rare stories where no matter how much evidence you show someone, people can look at the exact same facts and walk away with two completely different conclusions. And there is just so much that we still don't know about her death. We still don't even know how Mary was given the poison, which blows my mind. Someone was convicted, went to prison. We don't even know how the poison got in Mary. Tons of questions, but what we do know is that Mary lived with joy, and it's that joy, not the tragedy, that should define her legacy. Because in the middle of all of the suspicion, the courtroom drama, the media headlines, the documentary, all of this, we can't forget that this story is really about Mary, a woman who's described as radiant, selfless, gentle, loving, and so many other wonderful things. She was described as a person who made other people feel lighter and happier just by being in the same room. So while the case of Mary Yoder's death may remain complicated and controversial, her life was not. Her life was full of purpose, and that's what we should remember. So our hearts, my thoughts and prayers, I don't know why I always say my thoughts and prayers go out to, honestly, everyone involved in this. Mary's sisters, Katie, Bill, Adam. I know that maybe sound weird to say, but like, these people have been through so much. And at the end of the day, they all lost somebody. So it's this story really captivated me, and I'm still confused by it. I don't have a definitive answer in my mind. I lean towards that Katie did not do this, and I couldn't tell you exactly why. Yeah, some of the evidence, a lot of it is just how I felt watching the documentary. I would love to know what you guys think. I would really love to know what you guys think. So please, please, please write in, send messages. And I do want to say, just at closing, Human GPS, I did see your text message that inquiring minds are wondering what address the colchicine was sent to. And it is an excellent question that I fully intended to look up before this episode and absolutely did not. So I'm going to let you know somehow. I'll text you back and then I'll let you guys know on the next episode. Because I think it's a brilliant question, actually. Damn it, I can't believe I forgot to look that up. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed the end of this story. I know that it wasn't a Southwestern story. I apologize for that. I will be back next week with a Southwestern story. And if you are enjoying Death by Southwest, please subscribe, leave a review, come say hi on Instagram, TikTok, wherever. All that information is in the show notes. And until next time, I hope you guys stay safe, lock your doors, and thank you for listening. Love you guys. Bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, "Good night and good luck."